Hey, everybody, thanks for stopping by. A little Wednesday edition of WPT and 25. Jason, Joe, and Tommy M. Hope everybody is doing well. And, I guess I'll start with you guys, or Joe, I'll start with you. We'll head up to the Northeast first
We
to my
have
old
to.
stomping grounds in Brooklyn. I hope you're staying warm. I spoke with Jeff Lowe this morning. Jeff and I chatted a little bit about integration, headed to Dubai, and the note went out to the partners. But I know it's been a tough winter up there, and I'm not trying to rub it in as I sit here in shorts and flip
Yeah, yeah.
flops.
I'm, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for that. No, it's been brutal. It's really cold right now. That's why I got the hoodie on. Like even in the apartment with the heat blasting, it's still pretty cold. Next week seems like it's going to be warming up, and daylight savings is not too far away. March 9th, I feel like that's kind of the turning point to when you have spring in the actual view of everybody in the city. So I don't know. That's just a couple more weeks. That's the way I'm looking at it. A couple more weeks to brave.
Well, for me, and again, I lived on Long Island for pretty much close to the first 38 years of my life. So I've done some cold winters. For me, Joe, like the demarcation line was always like Gotham Day. Like
Right.
once Gotham Day hit, it was like, okay, Woods around the corner, we'll have Belmont opening. And, mentally, it's like, okay, winter's finally coming to a close.
It used to be when the main track opened, like when they stopped using the inner track, but now it's one track, so you don't have that line of demarcation. But yeah, I agree. Gotham Day, like that first or second week of March, that's when you can finally shake off a little bit of the depression.
And Tommy, you and I caught up yesterday for a little bit, and you told me something I didn't know actually, and I thought, okay, well, that's a sure sign that spring isn't all that far away. What is Keeneland, Barn area Keeneland opens up on March 16th?
I think so, yeah. So though once my at least, when I think spring's back, it's usually around March OBS, and then usually about the week after that, or maybe a few days, is when we see a couple vans start coming back to Kentucky, whether it be at Keeneland and Churchill. It's always, I like to think at least to me, it's a little bit of a holiday of sorts when that first van gets back through the gates at both those places, just because it's the sign that racing's gonna be back. Obviously, opening weekend at Keeneland is one of my favorite weekends of the year. Just whether I'm there or not, just being able to watch it's just fantastic. And then, everybody starts to get Derby fever here in Louisville, usually about a month out or so. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We just got some more snow last night. So, of course, that's not ideal in terms of thinking about better weather, but looking forward to it. I think in about a week, we're going to get a turn. And then, of course, I'll be able to join you, both of you guys down south in Ocala for some sunshine, hopefully for the 2-year-old sale.
Yeah, it's crazy to think we're less than a month out, right? I mean, you've got March 11th, 311 days, I like to call March 11th through March 13th for the OBS March sale. And that was a sale. I mean, OBS in general, I mean, even taking a quick macro snapshot from the last couple of years, it's been a good one for West Point, no doubt about it. I mean, Sandman, of course, comes to mind. Carson's Run, Don't Look Back at All, Slider, and I don't want to slight anybody, but we've definitely made some very solid additions to the West Point rosters, no doubt about that. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys in Ocala. And I think it's safe to say, Joe, we've got Derby fever within West Point Thoroughbreds, and to be fair, I think that's kind of the genesis of us getting together because and having this little powwow because and it's one more day of butterflies, maybe a little anxiousness, and certainly some excitement and optimism. We got to wait one more day because they postponed the Rebel until Sunday because of rough winter weather in Hot Springs. But we're going to send out a pretty salty one-two punch in the Rebel.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. And it's only my third year at West Point, but I just remember the previous 2 years, it was like scrambling. Like, do we have one horse that could maybe make the Derby? And now to have like a big three at least, with Keep It Easy and Sandman and Bullard, and I wouldn't sleep on Yinzer or Pascaline either. It might probably like a little too soon. Derby comes up a little too soon, but just in terms of like Triple Crown potential, like the stable is loaded with top class 3-year-olds, and I'm so excited to see two of them run in the same spot on Sunday.
Yeah, I am as well. And look, I mean, Yinzer, I think, is the perfect starting point as we go back to his win on Saturday afternoon at Fairgrounds. So let's hit play here. Now I can tap the screen. There we go. So we've got Yinzer into the far turn. And it was about this time, guys. I got to tell you, Tommy, I had the thought like, I think we're good here, man. It looks like Yinzer was just very comfortable. He's got a very high cruising speed, and I mean, the field is starting to really like gap out at this point. It looked like minus that the runner up Morlock, who took a pretty good run at him. No one else was coming. I was pretty confident here off the far turn.
Yeah, I was a little worried when I saw the half pop up, but then looking at Yinzer himself and just how easy and comfortable he was, I got pretty comfortable here, and I think he had a lot of chances to kind of stop during the long stretch at Fairgrounds, but he just kept digging in and finding more. He's a very tad bit green, I think, as they get a little bit closer to the wire here, and you can kind of see him uh, wandering a little bit. But we finally got to see all that talent. I think that we've known is there. He puts it together. He kind of drifts out a little bit there at the wire, but it wasn't anything crazy. But I just think the way he broke, I don't think we have that on camera here. He broke so well, cleared the field, got to the rail, and especially I think this race, now looking back, 2020 hindsight, really I think sets up what the Risen Star did and just how speed favoring the track was, and I think it played to his advantage. And what I looked at here in the turn was his ears. They're kind of
Yep.
he's kind of going back and forth, waiting to be asked. So that let me know Keith had a lot of horse underneath him. Just you can see him just pricked up, which is always a good sign, especially when you're turning for home with a lead like this, to know that you're gonna have enough horse to get there.
Joe, a couple of quick thoughts and well said, Tommy. Race came up solid as you would want it to. It was a big day of racing. It was Risen Star Day. This looked like, to my eyes, not that I'm watching every single race from Fairgrounds, I would venture a pretty strong opinion. This was the deepest maiden field on the dirt for 3-year-olds going longs thus far this winter at Fairgrounds. So
Yeah.
race came up fast, got an 85 buyer. Tommy mentioned something. I'm curious your take, and it's not me like, oh, Jason's got to nitpick and be a downer on everything. Part of me does wonder if not that we were carried entirely by the track, but I do think early speed was what you wanted in a very much general sense on the dirt there Saturday. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's like the only caveat for an otherwise like overwhelmingly positive performance is that the track was speed favoring. You didn't see a lot of horses make up big ground. Nevertheless, he went 46-4 which is like even on a speed favoring track is really fast. And same thing Tommy mentioned. He pricked his ears like right around the 5/16 pole, and you didn't know how much he had left at that point. And that gave me a ton of confidence. Another great point about the long stretch, like the quarter-mile stretch, like he really had to dig in. He's just a beautiful, beautiful horse. And it was, I I got a little nervous because he did go out to the front and kind of run off a little bit in the race in the slop last time. So I'm like, oh God, is this going to be a repeat of that where he goes too fast, too early, and then packs it in? But whether it was the dry track or just like a little bit more maturity, he looked like a totally different horse and looked like the horse that we saw in that first start that gave us so much hope for the future for him. And yeah, I mean, he's a beautiful animal. Speed is a weapon in any race, and I was just so glad to see him keep rolling.
And Steve, I got to give Asmussen credit. Now, we know Yinzer was a 7-figure yearling purchase from Saratoga a couple of summers ago. So this is a horse where there's a lot expected and there's a lot of expectations. But I mean, Asmussen hadn't wavered at all, even though we had some goofy trips and he snatched the feet, as they say, from the jaws of victory in that second start when he took the right-handed turn. Asmussen kept saying, no, this horse is legit. He's uber talented. And I was like you guys, happy and maybe a little relieved that he ran the way he did. And ultimately, we're going to leave it up to Steve in terms of what spot we come back in. Will it be a Kentucky Derby prep or a non-winners of one? But he bounced out of the race in good shape and good stuff there with Yinzer and the 85 buyer.
So
Let's
the only
fast forward.
only regret
Yeah,
is that I didn't bet more on him at 11 to
Yeah,
1.
same here.
Like
at least you both bet. I
a little
blew
bit.
it. I was out for a run. I had my phone on me, so I did watch the race. I was out for a nice, 5.5 mile run on Saturday, and I told Tommy yesterday, I'm like, And I'm like, dude, like we knew how blazingly nuclear supersonic that pace was last time. And you think like, Joe, how important like internal race dynamics are. So I
Yeah.
screwed that up royally. I'm glad both of you guys bet. I'm still mad at myself.
Yeah. It's the gambler's lament. Even when you win, it's like, oh God, I should
Should
have
have
bet
done
more.
more. Always.
What a game. What a game. Well, I was in good company Sunday. In fact, I watched this race from Gulfstream. We see absolutely hot. What is he? Maybe 5 pass or so off the rail with that head on shot, black cap and the black and gold sleeves. Watch this race not far from Dale. Had a couple of partners that had flown in. One of them, and not naming names here, one of them had 100 across on this horse. So made a nice little score, even though absolutely hot didn't win. But very good, very good turf debut, Tommy Murphy. I mean, you are the resident West Point Dale Romans whisperer. What do you think of the performance out of our Maryland bred son of promises fulfilled?
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I think the biggest thing that I took away with it is he never threw the towel in because I think right here I got a little worried how he
Yeah.
was going to finish up. I didn't know if he was going to Junior was either going to try to take him outside and maybe go wide of these horses, but we kept him in here. And a lot of horses, especially even in their only second start, kind of shy away from coming in between horses like this. And to see him finish up, outfinish that eight to his outside, finish the two, and really be the only horse that gets a little bit close to the nine. And I don't know if you have the gallop out, but I did hear from Dale as well that he galloped out really well. So I think that was a great step forward. The turf, I don't think is going to be a problem for him. I think ever since when we bought him down last year at OBS, here's the gallop out. We've known he's a quick horse. And I think, sprinting shorter seems to be his game right now. But, I'm selfishly looking forward to getting him back up to Kentucky and hopefully doing some damage with him at Keeneland and Churchill this spring.
And that, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of Joe like Dale's MO, right? I mean, he winters down in Florida. And look, this has been a recharged, refocused Dale Romans renaissance. And I think we're all proud of him and happy. Look, life's hard. Dale made some, I mean, open lifestyle changes. Been very upfront and honest about them. And that includes getting the surgery with the weight loss. But Dale, aside from having what's been a monstrous winter at Gulfstream, I mean, for the most part, his focus is on having his horses, his stock ready to fire big time starting in April, right? With the return to Keeneland.
Yeah, I mean it's been awesome to see. Like the guy didn't forget how to train. He's an Eclipse champion trainer for a reason. Sometimes you just have peaks and valleys in life. And yeah, I think a lot of the personal changes he's made have coincided with the fact that his barn has had this resurgence. So it's really exciting to see. And I love that race from Absolutely Hot. I love it even more than if he had gone out to the front and finished second. Because the question with him, we know he's got early speed. The question is, does he have finish? Because he didn't in his debut. Obviously, you can forgive that a little bit. Fast paced, quick, really high quality field. But you got to see them finish before you really know they can do it. He settled beautifully, like Tommy on the midway around the far turn. I was like, I don't know, not here. And then, he seemed like he was actually emboldened by the horse to his outside, showed that gameness, and was able to come through between horses. And the eight was coming in on him too. The eight was making it very tight in that last furlong. Just very, very proud of him. And I think this is something really, really something good to build off of for his career.
And I think he was feeling good this morning.
Yeah,
Christina and I stopped down. We paid Shug a visit, stopped over, saw Dale and Tammy, and made the rounds, and bounced out of the race in good shape. This turf course tends to play pretty speedy, pretty fast in terms of fractions and overall final time. I am not I wouldn't call myself like a speed figure guru. I certainly have a deep respect for the numbers, be it Ragozin, Thoroughgraph, or Buyer, even though all three are a little different. But in terms of track variant, Joe, I know there was some questioning the final number. For me, my takeaway is this is basically a 3-year-old in February sprinting on the turf. You don't see horses throw out Buyers in the mid 90s, right? Horses of Absolutely Hot's age. And this is generally a turf course that just plays really, really speedy day after day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. After the race, I immediately said, to a couple partners, I would guess like high 60s, maybe low 70s. You can't get wrapped up in the raw final time because it's all about relative to the other races that are run at that distance. Like 55 and 2, if you run that on like a boggy turf course at Keeneland, that's huge. But if you run it on, a pretty dry turf course at typically speed favoring at Gulfstream, it doesn't necessarily mean the same. And then you just kind of got to look at the context of the horses he was running with. Like if they give him an 80 buyer, that basically means that like the top 6 or 7 horses all ran huge career tops that race. And just like logically, that doesn't necessarily follow. So I think you have to look beyond the raw final time and look at the context, the other races that run at that distance, and then the other horses that were in the race, and kind of there is a little bit of fudging sometimes I think going on with the buyers where they retroactively move them up or down to have it make more sense. But I think in general they do a really good job, and they usually fit within the context of the race.
And they're up front, and there's plenty of info online in terms of their their process in making these figures. And I think again, Andy Byer, the team, Randy Moss does the Fairgrounds figures. I think Nick Tamaro at one time, perhaps still doing. I mean, there's a multitude of very smart guys that are true students of the game. They'll also say it's not an exact science, but it's
Right.
something they take very, very seriously. I was bummed, Tommy, just recapping Sunday Tiff's race. A little bit of cut in the ground Sunday at Fairgrounds, and she just did not bring her A game. I mean, that was kind of my obvious takeaway with her finishing in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think the key there is the little cut in the ground. I think Tom Morley had mentioned that's not really what she relishes, and she's a bigger body filly, and those kind of horses really don't travel all that well over soft ground because they tend to sink into it a little bit more. And when a lot of times you think of turf horses, you almost think of them gliding over the course instead of really digging in and kind of like what you see a lot of really good dirt horses do. So it didn't really play to her strengths there, and it was just a so-so effort. So hopefully next time out we can get her on something a little bit faster, a little bit more of a firm turf course to her liking.
Okay. Here's what's on tap in the very immediate future. As we tape this, and you can see in the upper left-hand corner, it's a little after 12:20 on Wednesday. We've got five entries here, including led by Bullard and Sandman in Sunday's Rebel Stakes. Shug talked to Shug this morning. He's entering Statesman yet again in that 3-year-old non-winners of one at Tampa. They've had 4. They're trying to get at least a couple other horses to have it go. So fingers crossed, Saturday's the day. And for what it's worth, some breaking news here with Langdon. It's also an extra race. It's a 1-mile maiden turf race on Saturday's card at Tampa. So there's no guarantee they actually go through and card it. But I was happy to hear Shug is ready to debut a colt who, if you recall last year, Joe, I mean, at OBS April when we bought him, I mean, you talk about an athlete and stride. I mean, he had all the tools for days.
Yeah, no, totally. Like the long stride, he had like the longest stride of anybody that day who had breezed. It just visually very impressive, and he seems to have impressed everybody he's been with. When he was down at Fairhill, he impressed Bruce and his team. He's impressed Shug and his team so far. I know Jason, you were a big fan of his from the jump. So yeah, he's one of the ones that I'm like kind of on pins and needles waiting to see run because I think the vibes have been good for him for throughout, and even if he's not like. He's the thing I like is that he's working on a surface that probably is not going to be his preferred surface, and the exercise rider and the barn still like what he's doing.
Yep, no doubt. Vibe is good. Anxious to get Langdon's career underway. So again, fingers crossed, both those boys get in Saturday at Tampa. And speaking of the boys and the black and gold and West Point Thoroughbreds, we'll throw that salty 1-2 punch in Sunday's rescheduled $1.25 million Rebel Stakes. This is a whole other conversation. I think in terms of, and the game on multiple fronts has its challenges. It really does. And Joe, I know you and John Green had some breaking news on your podcast, Rail Talk, yesterday about a new lobbying group, essentially, here starting in my neck of the woods in Florida, in terms of the state capitol in Tallahassee, and fighting against the decoupling. But I do want to mention that there are some bright spots, right? And states where things are really humming. And one of them, of course, is Arkansas and Oaklawn Park, which I still have. Either of you guys been to Oaklawn? Because I've never been, and I really, if someone wants to take me,
Yeah.
you know, I am America's guest, and I'm a good travel companion. So, you know, I will accept an invite if somebody wants to take me with them to Oaklawn, maybe for the Arkansas Derby.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I wanted to go this weekend. I have a family commitment, but I'm hoping if all goes well and Sandman is back in the Arkansas Derby, I'll get to hitch a ride on somebody's jet.
All right, good, good. Tommy will include you as well. Like, if
Just
you
swing by
invite
Louisville.
Joe, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, if you invite me, Joe, or Tommy, you're getting all three of us. Like,
Right.
it's a trifecta package deal. All right, we're like the
Exactly.
three musketeers. But again, my long-winded spiel. They've got giant purses. Things are going well at Oaklawn Park with the instant racing machines, and it's just wild to me looking at a quote unquote Kentucky Derby prep race per se that has a purse over $1 million. And sure enough, we've got two horses in the mix. So Joe, I'll stop belaboring the point. Give me your thoughts looking at what is almost like a late February like dry run for the Kentucky Derby in terms of the field size and the overall quality of the Rebel for 1.25.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy to see a $1.25 million restricted grade two, but that's just the way things are at Oaklawn, and we're happy to be the beneficiaries of that. I think there's a good amount of speed to the outside. You got Innovator for Dwayne, Smoking Wicked, who's super super talented for Dallas Stewart, but he's got to stretch out. From 6 furlongs. His one race at a mile in the Champagne was his worst race, but you got to think he's going to show speed on the outside. Speed King, who went out to the front last time in the Southwest, set a quick pace. So I think there'll at least be an honest pace. I'm pretty sure that Sandman's going to come with his run. Hopefully, he gets out of the gate better. I think he's the horse to beat if he breaks cleanly. I'm more interested to see what Bullard does. Just in terms of like what not being sure about his quality at this point. We obviously loved his first two races. I was pretty disappointed, in all fairness, in the San Vicente. I know Barnes ran them off their feet. I thought he should have run better than that. I still think he's mega talented. I still think 2 turns is probably going to be his best game. So yeah, I think Sandman, as long as he breaks well, is going to be right there, if not the clear winner. But I really want to see Bullard step it up as well, and hopefully, we have a 1-2 punch, if not for this race, then for the Arkansas Derby or the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, and that's a perfect jumping off point, Tommy, about Bullard. Like, all right, Barnes for me might be visually. I truly believe this. Like, in terms of just straight up raw athletic talent, I probably put him number one. Would
Mhm.
I want any part of him, even if he runs the table and wins the next two preps of his before the first Saturday in May? No, I don't. I don't know. And Into Mischief Colt at a short price is going to beat me on the first Saturday in May, going a mile and a quarter. It already happened with Authentic. It'll happen again if Barnes wins the Derby, especially at an underlaid price. But man, oh man, yeah, Joe said it. I mean, he just did not run well. I kept saying, like, with Bullard, his effort against Barnes last time in the San Vicente was like a sea level effort. So we need him. We need him to turn things around. We really do.
Yeah, 100% he does. And, that's that first race too, just freshly turned three, only by a couple of days, and then you run into Barnes, who I don't think I'll forget seeing him debut at Churchill. We had absolutely hot in that race, and he went up to the front. Just the way that Barnes won that race, and just the fashion he did it was very visually impressive, and he's continued that direction. But I would love to see Bullard bounce back here. It'll be interesting getting him to stretch out for the first time. Pedigree suggests that that won't be a problem, but I kind of have him, at least in my mind, in kind of the similar boat as Keep It Easy, where we know that the pedigree says they can run all day. but they're both have shown and really excelled sprinting, going 6.5 with Keep It Easy, and then now 6 and 7 with Bullard. So it'll be interesting to see. He's in great hands with Rispoli, a guy that I like when you have horses that have kind of build a rapport with a jock, especially like Umberto, and to make sure that he's going to ship with him and ride him. So there's going to be no change in a jock. And I know some horses are a little bit finicky with that. So I was very, very happy to see that. But a horse on the outside that you have in regular screen, I'm going to be keeping an eye on is Tistastic. It's a very Asmussen-esque horse where he has got a lot of races under his belt. And you can tell he's talented in with the company that he's kept, and he always seems to find a way to hit the board. Obviously, he beat us with Sandman when he ran second on the street sense at Churchill, and you can see his numbers are slowly creeping in the right kind of direction. So that don't love the 13 hole, but he's going to be a horse that I'm going to keep an eye on, coming from the way outside and getting Jose Ortiz back on board.
Yeah, speaking, and I'm glad you brought up Tistastic. I mean, at best, I hope he's third behind Sandman and or Bullard, like a WPT exacta in the Rebel. I was remiss, guys, right after the Yinzer race, not to just at the very least give a passing comment, and I want to hear what both of you have to say about the Risen Star. Watching that race, like the Yinzer race looked like, again, the way him and Morlock just kind of gapped out the field and nobody else ran a step. I'm like, I do wonder if that's a slightly dressed up performance. And then, a few hours later, Magnitude runs off the screen at over 43-1, gets a 108 buyer, and like no one gains an inch. And that to me, that was like the linchpin in saying, you know what, speed was the weapon of choice. You didn't necessarily have to be on the lead, but there's no doubt about it. It was a speed friendly track. Joe, I'll start with you in terms of the Risen Star. A, how brutally tough a game is this? And B, do you want anybody else from the runner up chunk of gold, maybe down to East Avenue, who could not have run any worse in his seasonal debut out of this race?
Yeah, that was to me, that was the story of the race. Obviously this, you got the horse with the blowout win, a 108 buyer. He unfortunately came up with an ankle chip, so he's going to miss the Derby. Beyond that, the story of the race was how bad East Avenue was. Now, he obviously was very good in his first couple of starts, and you could give him a major excuse for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile because he stumbled and went to his face at the start. So he was one of the horses I was really looking forward to seeing most on Saturday, and they bet him down to 4-5, like he couldn't lose, and he just had nothing in the stretch. And like you said, on a speed favoring track, I think that does not augur well for him. Hopefully, he can bounce back at some point, but I wouldn't want to be holding a Derby future ticket on East Avenue right now after that run. And yeah, I mean, magnitude, speed again, like similar to the Yinzer, like speed favoring track or no. You went off by 9 3/4 lengths and you get a 108 buyer. Like you got a lot of talent. And I think he'll be heard from later this summer. He's by Not This Time. We see that Not This Time is lighting up the track left and right. I do think that Chunk of Gold is the horse you want out of the race, going forward, just because he was the only one that made up any real ground. He had a little traffic trouble, kept coming, and just was able to edge out Built for second. Built's a much more accomplished horse to that point. I think he's a little bit interesting going forward, but yeah, it's hard to find anybody else to really grasp onto behind the top two.
And Tommy, well said, Joe. Tommy, it did get me thinking, and not that I had a penny to win on Magnitude. I wish I did after I screwed up Yinzer's race. We have a pretty nice, newly, freshly turned 2-year old that I just saw in Ocala a couple of weeks ago, named If Ever by Not This Time. So I'd be lying if I said he didn't cross my mind going to Shug. And I even had a couple of partners who aren't in on him, who are true long-time students of the game, love pedigrees, love physicals. I mean, really take the game as seriously as we all do. This is a true story. I had a couple of people that regretted passing up a piece on If Ever after seeing like the updated video of him a couple of weeks ago at Doc Eisenman's, which made me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice when you buy horses like that. They progress and they really start to develop into what really look like specimens of racehorses. And then you see, horses by the same sire put in efforts like that. It really makes you feel good. It reminds me of over the summer when why am I blanking on the name? When Dornock won the Belmont, when we had just got Sorcerer Silver, it was right before he was named. But to have won by good magic, just like that, really got me excited. And to see him kind of progress from that spot where he was right after when he got to the Dale barn and developed where he was a couple weeks ago, breaking his maiden was awesome. And I think this is something that we can go back to with this horse because I remember seeing him at the sale. He was just a beautiful, beautiful horse. And then seeing the progression from that picture, which I remember I was standing right there when that picture was taken, to see it. And your video was just, it was awesome. And it's really what gets you excited about a lot of these horses, just to see them take that step forward and grow up and really start to look like adult racehorses rather than, the juvenile yearlings that you see more often than not.
Yeah, it was easy, guys, to get excited. I know I shared with the team and a bunch of partners too. I even texted David and Gordo after the Ocala trip. I just said, again, from a macro level looking down, looks like a really, really solid group of horses. And I mean, as of mid February, give or take, knock on wood, everybody was doing what you would want them to be doing in terms of progressing, staying healthy. So we've got some fun times in store. Guys, before we wrap up here, and this has been an excellent conversation. Aside from, of course, the Rebel this weekend, I was pretty excited to get an entry note from the great Jeff Lowe about this 4-year-old colt by Constitution named Legalize, who did win a minor stakes right around Christmas time of his 2-year-old season at Fairgrounds. And Joe, we'll get back in the mix here in a few days with Legalize. Who, couple of quick thoughts. He's not the
Yeah,
only horse trained by Cherie in the race,
I was
and
gonna say.
Cherie is having. I mean, you talk about breakout's the wrong word because her career has just been like Bitcoin or Apple stock. It's been trending up now for quite some time. But dude, I mean, the winter she's had at Fairgrounds, like she's just crushing it.
Yeah, no, she's one of the hottest trainers in America, I would say, and I think people are finally starting to take notice. But yeah, it's just a jumping off point for Legalized. I think this is kind of a prep for something at Keeneland. But yeah, that horse on the outside, Montalcino, big time monster. Like that race, all three of his races really. But when he won at Keeneland, running 43 and 3, 108 flat, and kept going and opening up in the stretch. Like that's a big time effort. You see the horses who have been behind him in his first two starts who have come back to win. And he was best last time in that race at Fairgrounds because, of course, I needed him to close out like a monster pick 5 and just got nailed by
Oh,
that. Who's a nice old timer horse, war horse. But yeah, he's going to take some beating for sure. But it'll be great to get Legalized back. And like I said, this will be like a prep for him for Keeneland for him.
all right, awesome. Yeah, we've got a big Keeneland on tap. So let me it's been a minute here. Let's stop. We will stop the share and we'll get locked and loaded for the weekend, boys. This was a very, very good conversation. Before we say goodbye, Joe, since we got you, and again, it was very much not only like uber important news, but kind of breaking as far as Rail Talk yesterday when you and John released your episode on Tuesday. Give us a little snapshot of Damon Thera, who's been a great ally, a great ambassador, a great friend of thoroughbred racing, and did some great things in his legislative career in Kentucky. Give us the overview of the new group and what's at stake here.
Yeah, so it's a initiative started by Damon Thayer, David O'Farrell of Ocala, John Green, our friend Doc Iserman, and Mark Cassie to fight the decoupling legislation down in Florida, which basically separates the racetrack and the casino. Basically, Gulfstream exists in part because there's something in the law, there's a statute that says you have to conduct a certain amount of live racing days in order to have the casino there. This is trying to keep that the case. And I think the bigger implication, too, is that this is just the first fight. It's called the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative. You can go on their website and donate or help or contact them. I think the idea is to then take this fight to California and other places where racing might be facing an existential crisis because we're in trouble in a couple of different states. Like you said, Damon Thayer, he has the experience of getting that HHR legislation passed through the Kentucky House of Representatives and Senate, and that's been a huge boon for Kentucky racing. So I think we got the right people, and organization is key. Organization and unification of the interests in Florida and in this business. Like we don't have enough of it. I think this is a great start.
Well, this podcast was probably a very prime and solid example in terms of unification, right?
Yeah, that's always, always.
They were probably tuning in. I could see Damon Thayer checking out West Point in 25, right? And all right, we'll say goodbye on that note. I look forward to visiting Oaklawn Park with the two of you guys. We're not rooming
Yeah.
together. I need my own room. All right.
All right.
All right. And yeah, good luck. Good luck to all of our horses over the next